My grandfather left me his entire estate worth
$3,500,000.
I saved Claire's text messages. I wrote down every rumor I heard in town and where it had come from. At work, I started staying late, using the company's public computers to research estate law, trust funds, and property management. If they wanted to treat me like I was incapable, I was going to make sure I became the most capable person in the room. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. I smiled when people sneered, stayed calm when my parents sent their little barbs, and acted like I was backing down. All the while, I was building something quietly beneath the surface. It was lonely, painful. Every day felt like walking a tightrope over an endless drop. But there was a strange power in the silence. For the first time, I wasn't reacting. I was preparing, and I had the distinct, unshakable feeling that my grandfather would have been proud. I didn't know when or how, but I swore to myself that the day would come when the balance shifted, when I'd stop being the target and start being the one holding the strings. I just didn't realize how quickly that opportunity would arrive, or how brutally my parents would try to force my hand. The shift didn't happen overnight, but once it began, it felt unstoppable, like a tide finally turning in my favor after years of being dragged under. I kept my head down, worked long hours, and poured myself into learning everything I could about handling wealth responsibly. It wasn't about the money itself, not really. It was about proving to myself that I wasn't the helpless child my parents had always claimed I was. The first real turning point came when I hired a financial advisor, not someone flashy or connected to my parents' world, but a quiet, meticulous man named Richard who had been recommended through a coworker. He wasn't impressed by the size of the estate, and he didn't treat me like a child. He sat across from me with a yellow legal pad, asked careful questions, and listened to my answers without judgment. By the end of our first meeting, he handed me a simple plan: investments diversified, taxes covered, long-term security built in. You're more than capable, he told me as we shook hands. You just needed someone to confirm it. Those words lit something inside me. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't just holding on to my grandfather's gift out of fear. I was building on it. I used part of the estate to buy a modest home in a quieter part of town. Nothing ostentatious, nothing my parents could sneer at as showing off, but it was mine. Walking through those empty rooms the first night, I stood in the middle of the living room and just let the silence wash over me. No one could throw me out here. No one could tell me I didn't belong. The keys in my pocket were proof that I'd finally carved out something real. At work, too, things started to change. I had been just another name on the payroll, but now, with the weight of my grandfather's letter in the back of my mind, I started pushing harder. I volunteered for projects, stayed late, delivered more than people expected. Slowly, people began to notice. A promotion came, small but significant. My boss told me, "You've got leadership in you, Jacob. You just need to believe it yourself." I didn't broadcast any of this. I knew better than to let my parents catch wind of how well things were going. But inevitably, word trickled out. Small-town gossip had a way of circling back, and soon enough, I started hearing whispers that only fueled me more. He bought a house. He's got a new job title. Maybe Harold knew what he was doing after all. The rumors my parents had spread were starting to crack, replaced by something else, respect even if grudging, and that respect terrified my parents more than anything. One evening, Claire showed up at my new house uninvited. I didn't let her pass the porch. She stood there in heels, arms folded, her expression caught between disbelief and irritation. "Nice place," she said flatly. "Did you decorate it yourself, or did you finally get someone to hold your hand?" I didn't bite. I just leaned against the doorframe and said, "I'm doing fine, Claire, better than fine." Her eyes narrowed. "Don't get cocky, Jacob. You think one house and a job promotion means you've won. Dad's already looking into ways." She stopped herself, biting her lip, but I caught it. Dad's already looking into ways to what? Regain control? Undermine me? It didn't matter. I knew then that they hadn't given up, and that's when I realized my rise wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about positioning. Every step forward was leverage. Every success was a weapon they couldn't take from me. I began aligning myself with people outside of my family's reach. I joined a local charity board in my grandfather's name, honoring the work he'd quietly done for years. I worked with people who respected my grandfather, who remembered his integrity and generosity. With each handshake and each connection, I was weaving a net of support around myself, one my parents couldn't break with gossip alone. Inside, I was still cautious, still carrying the scars of those early years, but for the first time, I felt a quiet confidence building. My parents had expected me to stumble, to drown in responsibility. Instead, I was learning to swim in deeper waters than they ever imagined. Still, I kept my preparations hidden. I knew the storm wasn't over. If anything, it was gathering, and when it broke, I wanted to be ready, because I could feel it coming. My parents weren't the type to accept defeat quietly. They tried manipulation. They tried theft. They tried slander. None of it had worked. The next move, I knew, would be bigger, more desperate, and when it came, I had to be in a position not just to defend myself, but to strike back. The setup came almost by accident, though in hindsight, it felt like my grandfather's hand guiding me even years after his passing. At one of the charity board meetings, I met a man named Daniel Grant. He was in his late 50s, a retired attorney with sharp eyes and the kind of calm presence that made you lean in when he spoke. He had known my grandfather personally. Apparently, they played chess together every Thursday night for nearly a decade. When he found out who I was, his expression softened. Harold was a rare man, he said, shaking my hand firmly. I hope you know how proud he was of you. Something about the way he said it felt different, almost conspiratorial. Later, over coffee, he leaned across the table and lowered his voice. You should be careful. Your grandfather anticipated there might be trouble after he passed. He put certain protections in place. I froze. Protections? What kind of protections? Daniel smiled faintly. That's something we can talk about more formally, but let's just say Harold wasn't blind to your parents' nature. He made sure the estate would be safeguarded in ways they wouldn't expect. If they overstep, it won't just be morally wrong, it'll be legally disastrous for them. For the first time, I realized I wasn't just playing defense. I had ammunition. Over the next few weeks, Daniel helped me understand exactly what my grandfather had done. The estate wasn't just a lump sum of money, it was structured carefully. There were deeds, shares in a small portfolio of properties, and even a trust earmarked specifically for philanthropic projects in my name. More importantly, there were clauses, ironclad stipulations that explicitly disinherited my parents if they attempted to interfere or present themselves as representatives. My grandfather had written it all down, signed and notarized, as though he knew they would try to take what wasn't theirs. As Daniel laid it all out, piece by piece, I felt something shift inside me. All those years, I thought I was alone, powerless, scrambling to survive. He had seen the storm brewing, and he had left me not only the resources to withstand it, but the leverage to fight back. Jacob's parents made one last desperate move. They took him to court. They tried to paint him as reckless, incapable, and unworthy of managing his grandfather's estate. But Jacob wasn't the same weak boy they had bullied for years. He had proof, witnesses, and above all, his grandfather's ironclad will. Inside the courtroom, Jacob spoke calmly, every word steady. When the judge reviewed the documents, the decision was clear. Jacob was the rightful heir. Any further interference from his parents would not only fail, it would bring legal consequences upon them. As they left the courtroom, his parents' faces showed defeat, bitter and hollow, but Jacob's face carried something else. Peace. He had finally won, not just the inheritance, but his dignity, his independence, and the life his grandfather had always wanted for him. That night, standing in the quiet of his new home, Jacob looked up at the sky and whispered softly, "Grandpa, I didn't let you down." If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and most importantly, subscribe to Home Exposed for more shocking Reddit stories every day.